Hello, everybody, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Marco Tedesco. I'm a professor at Columbia University, where I work with floods and remote sensing, and I've been asked to moderate this meeting, this event, one of the Network Fridays organized by the AIR Center. Today, we have the pleasure of having Dava Newman with us and her team, or the team that helped Dava to develop this, depending how you see it. Dava has been a former deputy NASA administrator, and she's currently a professor at MIT. I don't think she needs a lot of introduction given her achievements in the career. She's an Apollo Program Professor of Aeronautics and Astronautics and Engineering Systems at MIT, and she's also the McVicar Faculty Fellow, and she's a former Director of Technology and Policy Program at MIT. She's, since 2011, the MIT-Portugal Program Director. Dava, she's going to talk, and the team, they're going to present physics-informed GANs for coastal flood visualization. It's, of course, artificial intelligence application, GANs, generative adversarial neural networks, and we have a long list of collaborators and students, and I will let each of them to introduce themselves with their names and their role and their affiliation as they speak. I wanted to kindly remind everybody for posting your question and answers, your question to the Q&A section of your Zoom. Please do not use the chat. Just use the Q&A as that button that you have at the very bottom right, which is beside the button that says record. Again, I will be collecting these questions. So we'll be having different presentations from different team members, and we will be having 15 minutes for question and answers, and I will select some of the questions. I will try to group the questions into themes, and I'll try to do my best to make everybody at least heard from their questions. Of course, I'll be more than happy with your center to forward the questions. We're going to be having recorded them, and any of you might want to follow up with Dava or with your center. Should feel free to do so. I will then leave now the stage to Dava, and again, please remember to put your Q&A questions in the Q&A box. And thank you very much for joining this Network Fridays, and thank you to Dava and the rest of the team for joining us and giving this this presentation today.
Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Dava Newman here. Marco, thank you very much for the kind introduction. And we really want to thank the AIR Center for this Networking Friday. As I said, I'm Dava Newman from MIT. I woke up this morning and asked myself a question. What's the most important thing I can be working on today? And the answer came back. And it was saying whatever we can do as an engineer, as a scientist, as an artist, a designer, whoever you are, it's really working to help restore balance for what I call spaceship Earth. That's Earth. You know, we're all astronauts living on this planet. And it's this decade, the urgency of climate change and adaptation and mitigation. So we couldn't be, I think, more glad to be with you. We have an amazing team of folks who I have the pleasure to introduce, but we come from very different backgrounds, but we've all been focused on what can we contribute to help accelerate positive change for the climate. And specifically, I talk about it in terms of Earth systems, from the oceans to the land to the air. And as a rocket scientist and aerospace engineer myself, okay, what about all of our satellite data? How can we curate the data? How can we use it? How can we put this information into people's hands so that everyone can act? Everyone, all of humanity can act to help live in balance with nature, we live in balance for all of us. So this is the biggest, boldest kind of global, ambitious project that I can think of. But everyone has to be an actor. Everyone has to do their part. So that's a quick high-level introduction. I want to tell you a quick story about the team you're going to hear from. NASA. When I was at NASA, we wanted innovation. We wanted to bring in the world to solve really big problems. And so NASA kicked off through its innovation work, the Frontier Development Lab. Well, what does that mean? It said, it's not just for people in the US and not even just Europe. We need to include the world. And so I started a program called FDL, or the Frontier Development Lab, to say we need to accelerate artificial intelligence. We need to accelerate machine learning for our hardest scientific problems. So they have to do with human spaceflight. They have to do with climate. They have to do with maybe emergency disasters, all these areas. And we said maybe the way to do that is to get really smart folks from all over the world to work together. And so in teaming, working with lots of the big IT companies, Google and IBM, Microsoft, for cloud services, things, saying let's pair up artificial intelligence folks that have backgrounds in AI, machine learning, but with the scientists and with the engineers. And if we put these teams together, we can work on really important projects. So that's a quick background, but last 5 years, there's been a very intense summer program called the Frontier Development Lab. And that's how all of us got together, who you're gonna hear from. So we're gonna talk about some climate disasters, flooding in particular. We're gonna talk about forests and biodiversity in the forest. Talk a little bit about the oceans. AI for ethics, really critically important contributions. We can't do any of this work unless we kind of have some background and framing in ethics. And what about going from our huge climate models and becoming localized? What about specifically zooming in on high precision, running fast AI algorithms, but make them local so that it matters to all of you listening, wherever you are, to give you the information that you need. So that's this great team assembled. I'm going to go through some quick introductions, and then we're going to break into kind of 5-minute research lightning talks for you. So you're going to hear from Björn Lütjens. Brandon is a dual master's degree student at MIT in technology and policy and aeronautics and astronautics. Is fascinated and has a great background in science communications. How can he get all of this great information out there to everyone? He's running our Earth Ambassadors program, training students in leadership and negotiations. And he's also working on the technical part of visualizing satellite imagery of the future. So you're going to hear about that. Then you're going to hear from Björn Lütjens, who's a PhD student, a doctoral student in the Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT, who's also on our Earth Intelligence Engine team, but he really comes at it from, what about applying physics-informed neural networks? Can we put the physics and the neural networks in and look at those uncertainties, kind of quantification of those uncertainties. He also has an amazing background, collaborates very closely with folks at ETH Zurich on the One Forest project. So you're going to hear about that, AI and big data for identifying biodiversity in the forests. And then we're going to, I think we're going to go over then after that maybe to Natalia Díaz-Rodriguez. Dr. Díaz-Rodriguez is from Spain, and now she's assistant professor in AI and Autonomous Systems and Robotics Lab at ENSTA, Institut Politécnico de Paris. Natalia joined this team, and we're so happy to meet her this summer and now count her as a colleague and collaborator. She's doing many different activities, but really important from the outreach aspect of it. Again, AI and for climate, really specializing in some deep reinforcement, unsupervised learning. And today, I think she's going to put in talk to us a little bit about what she's doing for AI and ethics. Again, critically, we can't have a discussion if we don't bring in the AI for ethics. We're also going to hear from Christian Requena-Mesa. Christian hails from Spain, but now he's in Germany, and he's working. He is an environmental scientist and interested in machine learning, artificial intelligence. Now he's pursuing his PhD in computer science at FSU Jena, and he has a great background, has worked for the German Space Agency, DLR, as well as the Max Planck Institute, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about the climate localization. So without any further ado, we're going to go through our quick research presentations, and then we're going to have a great question and answer. So thank you everyone for joining. And I just want to make the point, it's great to, this team really connects North America to Europe, and really it's been wonderful to work together. So Brandon, you want to kick us off?
Thanks, Dava. Just a quick reminder, please use Q&A for putting your questions. I don't mean to sound oppressive, but it's very important we collect all the questions there so I can put them together for the speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So to kick us off with the discussion of AI and sustainability and what we can do for Earth, we want to focus a little bit on one natural disaster that happens quite frequently, which is flooding. And that's the disaster that we were working with as a team this summer. Now, according to the UN, flooding is the most expensive disaster in the world. Floods cost billions of dollars every year. And if we imagine now a city planner who is trying to convince their city to invest in more climate resilient infrastructure, things like seawalls or mangrove protection or any kind of structure like that, there's this question of how does that city planner communicate the flood risks most effectively to the mayor, the governor, the executive? Well, it turns out that today's flood visualizations are either informative, as in pixels on a map like this, or intuitive, as in street level flooding. Now, according to our expert interviews, including with an Air Force weather officer, these color-coded images can be hard to grasp for non-technical decision makers, while the street level images don't really have enough information for decision support. So last summer, we set out to fill that research gap. Like David said, my name is Brandon. I'm joined here by a couple of my teammates from FDL, from the Frontier Development Lab, which we're happy to answer questions about afterwards. And we have France, Germany, and Spain represented, but we'd love to see Portugal as well. And as far as the outputs, we constrained generative vision models with physics-based inputs to visualize future flooding on the US East Coast to assist in climate resilient city planning. In other words, we can now generate satellite imagery of floods that haven't even happened yet. And throughout this presentation, I'll share with you some of the previous research that we've built upon, how we created physically consistent satellite imagery, and how we evaluated that imagery. So let's start with some of that previous work. NOAA's SLOSH model is a storm surge model that we used as input to our GAN. Now, it visualizes flood extent, but its outputs aren't very high resolution. Still, many US government agencies use SLOSH, and we want our work to be accessible by those government agencies. So we used SLOSH as well. We also had thousands of satellite images from pre and post flooded areas that we were able to use in our model training. And in particular, we actually used images from 6 disasters in the US. Finally, in order to combine those two, in order to combine the flood model and the satellite image, we turned to a new generative vision technique called a GAN, a generative adversarial network. And let me show you an example of what GANs can do. So if we take this pre-flooding image and we run it through a GAN that has been trained on pre and post-flooding images, we see that it adds water, adds flooding to that bottom left of the image. This is generated without any physics constraints. Now, the problem is, without physical inputs, it kind of just adds water in randomly. Because when we look at the actual ground truth image of what that looked like post-flooding, we see that that area in the bottom left was actually not flooded. So clearly we need some kind of physical constraints in order to inform the generation of satellite imagery. And that's what we created. The first physically constrained photorealistic visualization of coastal floods. So this is a satellite image somewhere in Texas before Hurricane Harvey hit. And this is that same place afterwards. I'm going to show you a third image. And if that third image is successful, if we've been successful in creating satellite imagery from the future, that third image should look super similar to the post-flooding image. So here we go. That's ours. And as you can see, it's pretty close. It's pretty similar. So let's get into how we actually did this. Our GAN learned the relationship between pre-flood, segmentation, and post-flood images. So during training, the GAN got access to all 3 of these, and it learned, okay, well, if there's a pre-flood image that looks like this, and there's a segmentation map which tells me there's water here but not here, then the post-flood image should look like this. And then during inference, we take away that post-flood image and we say, here's another pre-flood image and a segmentation map that you haven't seen before. Can you generate that post-flood image? And it does. So in order to evaluate this, we actually generated baseline images for comparison. So again, here's our pre-flood image, the post-flood image, which is the goal, and a segmentation map, which again, blue is just water, white is not water. It tells the GAN, put water here. Our idea for a baseline was, let's just take all of the pixels in the pre-flood image that are supposed to be water and replace them with the color brown. And you can see that the baseline actually doesn't look bad. And the GAN doesn't look bad either. But here's the problem. We are trying to generate satellite imagery from the future, not satellite imagery of floods that already exist or that have already happened. So when we look at the segmentation maps that we have, as I mentioned, slosh is pretty low resolution. So our baseline looks super pixelated, but our GAN actually still manages to incorporate this information in a way that looks photorealistic and is physically consistent. In terms of measuring our success, we created a new metric by combining two other ones that are fairly commonly used, called LPIPS and IOU, to measure photorealism and physical consistency. So LPIPS is a distance metric. LPIPS answers the question, how far away are these two images from each other visually? IOU, or intersection over union, asks, is the water in the right spot? Did this GAN put water in this image in the same place as the segmentation map says it should go? And when we combine those, we get this flood visualization plausibility score. And we see that we actually score higher than the baseline, both for the physics uninformed network, which I showed at the very beginning, and for the network that was informed by the low resolution slosh, and for the network that was informed by the high resolution segmentation maps. Overall, we constrained generative vision models with physics-based inputs to visualize future flooding, which is what you see in that bottom row images. So we set out to help city planners communicate more effectively, more visually, more intuitively about flood risks to support climate resilient infrastructure development. And we did that using data from the US, but this is certainly a process that we can use with European data, or a structure framework that we can use with European data. And in fact, in terms of future work, we want to generalize our work. So not just to other events like wildfires and Arctic sea ice potentially, but also to other areas like Europe, obviously. And also we would love to see our work be integrated into existing systems and made public, whether through NOAA or NASA. Overall, FDL is a wonderful experience, which, as I mentioned, we'd love to answer questions about. We couldn't have done it without the support from MIT-Portugal and from our FDL mentors. So it was really, really special to get to work together in this awesome team and build technology that supports climate resilience for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I'll pass it on now to back to Dava, I guess, or Marco.
No, I think who's the next speaker now? I think
we're ready with Bjorn. We're going to go from floods to we're going to go from floods to forests now.
Yeah, Bjorn, please go ahead. We have two questions, and I'm inviting the speaker attendees to post most questions in the Q&A box. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So next presentation about floods. Forests. My name is Bjorn. Hello, everybody. And I want to let you know that every 2 seconds, we lose a football field of rainforest due to deforestation. So here you can see past satellite imagery in Bolivia, and you can see how agriculture is expanding, chopping down the forests we have. And largely this deforestation is driven by agriculture. Now, we said, okay, we have to take on this problem, and we do it by monitoring forest conservation projects with machine learning and drones. A drone you can see here that I flew over a forest in Peru. And this is a very close collaboration with ETH Zurich and people from Peru and Ecuador. Now, the issue in deforestation and forest degradation is so big that it accounts for 15% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. That's huge. And international stakeholders like the UN REDD program, Google or Microsoft, they have realized that that actually is a big problem, and they are paying landowners now for forest conservation in the form of carbon credits. But in order to receive the money, these landowners need to quantify how much carbon are they actually storing in their forests? The issue with that is that monitoring forest carbon is very, very difficult. So most of the time people are going through the forest like I did here in Peru, and then you take a tape measure and you measure the diameter and height and write down the species of every tree you see. Now you can imagine that that's going to take an eternity, and while being very accurate, it's incredibly expensive. So on the other hand, you can measure carbon from satellite, but due to the low resolution, you'll mostly be able to say whether the area is forested or not, and the carbon estimates can become very inaccurate. So right now, there's no affordable and accurate solution to monitor small-scale forest conservation projects. And that's such a big problem that in Peru, for example, the government actually discarded a large project around agroforestry because they couldn't monitor it. So what we're proposing is the machine learning-based estimation of forest carbon from drone imagery. It works like this. Landowner on the left contracts a drone owner to create a map of their forest. The landowner then uploads the map, and we run a machine learning algorithm that extracts tree height and tree species from which we can then calculate the forest carbon. When I say tree species, I mostly mean tree family, because estimating tree species is so fundamentally difficult. The main issue with that is that there exists no global data set to train or transparently benchmark the used algorithms. So we're creating One Forest. One Forest is a global open access tree family data set. And for creating this data set, we've created machine learning algorithms that ensure the data privacy of the landowner and verify the integrity of the reported imagery. Thank you very much for your attention. Special thanks to the collaborators from Europe, and even more thanks to Sandro Pimentel, the conservationist of the rainforest we can see here in the top right, who 2 years ago, after I cold called him, took me to the rainforest and actually sparked all of this.
Thank you, Björn. I see we're receiving questions. I appreciate people answering the questions on the Q&A. I will leave some of the questions unanswered so we can actually share them with everybody. And I also am happy to reopen the question if it's been answered on the Q&A, and so that everybody else can participate. But I'm not saying that you don't have to answer to the questions by typing. I'm just saying that if you want to, I can also re-ask the questions in case of that. But thank you so much for starting to put questions in. I don't know who's next now.
Yeah, I think we're going from forests to ocean now, presented by Océane.
Océane,
yes.
please.
Hello, Océane. Thank you. Hi. Hand it over to you.
Yes, my Wi-Fi has been a bit choppy, so hopefully this won't. Do let me know though if you guys can't see the screen. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share. And how do we share? Share. Wow. There you go. Okay. So now we're going from the forestry. Now I'm going to take you down below the water into the oceans, where we know that the ocean, right, is the world's largest food system. Fisheries are the biggest contributor to global protein needs for humanity, period. However, you know, we come across these major conservation challenges associated with the fisheries sector, including illegal fishing and human rights abuses, destructive fishing practices. The list goes on. So in my thesis work, I worked with Conservation International out of MIT's Open Ocean Initiative. And we partnered in order to evaluate the transformative potential for electronic monitoring systems, specifically those using computer vision and real-time assessment on board vessels while they're at sea. So fisheries, as part of the Sustainable Development Goal 14, we know that fisheries and aquaculture are a priority. We want to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. What exactly does electronic monitoring look like? And I'm showing you this image on the left. where this is essentially a diagram of what's on the vessel in the right. So I went to, I worked with a Spaniard vessel in Ecuador, Manta, Ecuador, a long line skipjack tuna vessel. And this is a vessel that has tons of kind of electronic monitoring equipment that they didn't really know what to do or how to crunch their data. So it was really interesting and learning from them how they currently use video camera and what they wanted to use camera for. Just to get the idea across, to really solidify the point of why electronic monitoring
Oceane, you're breaking up. Oceane, you're breaking up. Maybe turn off your video and we can see your slides.
Yeah, let me stop the video. Are you guys able to still see the slides now or no? Maybe not.
Yes, we can see the slides and hear you better. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, perfect. I should have done that from the get-go. So I'm not sure what you guys didn't hear, but video cameras, that was specifically of interest in electronic monitoring, because with currently at sea, you have observers on vessels. These observers are humans who go with these checklist items of, okay, have they caught the amount of fish that their permit allows? If not, then you get fined for XYZ. But this happens, it gets rough because at sea, observers are also humans and mistakes are made. So it's interesting. This was kind of a prototype that we installed vessel in Ecuador to see if we could gather data and essentially monitor how much fish are coming on the vessel, how many people are fishing actively, and how much bycatch, meaning the amount of fish that is not part of the required permitting and it's kind of just tossed overboard. And bycatch can include things like sea turtles, other fish we like to catch. So it's all a really interesting electronic systems on these vessels for sustainable fishery management. And I'm about to show you earlier, but
you were breaking up, Oceane. I'm sorry. If you could repeat the last maybe 30 seconds would be great.
Okay.
I think we lost her.
I think we might have lost her. Yeah. I think we lost her. Let's go ahead. Sorry about that. We'll try to come back and get to the punchline if we can.
Yeah, she's back. She's back.
Oceane, do you want to continue and try to, sorry to rush you, but maybe you could just summarize the high points so we can continue on?
Absolutely, definitely. So essentially, sustainable fisheries management can be bettered through electronic monitoring, and computer vision is very much a real and thoroughly plausible use case on vessel in order to properly monitor the amount of fish removed from the ocean and in order to have fish for the next 100 years. It's a really interesting proposition, and the research is really active right now, and it's really exciting. So happy to talk about that afterwards, or if anybody has any questions about what that looks like. Sorry for the shaky connection, y'all.
That's great. No, we heard that's a great summary, and I know there's going to be a lot of interest from a lot of folks involved in the Air Center, from our floods to our biodiversity and forest to fisheries. And now we're going to turn it over to Natalia.
I would like to still, I'm sorry, this is Mark. I will still to invite the participants to submit their questions in the Q&A box. Thank you so much. Natalia, please.
Hello. I'm going to try share my screen. Okay, it's asking for permissions. Sorry, it's asking for some permission to record. Should be good. It's not letting me choose the, let me try again. Okay, now. Okay, hello everyone. I am Natalia Díaz-Rodriguez, and I am an assistant professor at the INSTA Paris and Institut Polytechnique of Paris. And I wanted to guide you through some learnings we found through our fun summer. I'm also co-founder of Continual AI. And teach SDGs ambassador. So our summer was pretty fun. I have learned like so much, and if you think of how impactful this project can be, it's not just a summer. That's what we work, but it starts much earlier. So in this talk, I would like to focus on this part. So when we define the challenge, so this starts at the beginning of the year, and it in fact has many stakeholders. And even though we were just working during the summer, this talk is concerned with defining your challenge. As you can see, we have many things to celebrate. We learned a lot in this summer, and we made also long-lasting friends. But if you want to celebrate fully, you should not still forget any step. And because some things to think about before you delve into your project is, for instance, that you might get some criticism. For instance, this is some of the this is a poster we actually presented, and we submitted our work to some conference where it's one of the most popular in AI today. And there is still after putting a lot of work into your project, your work actually can get rejected. And this is why I would like to raise awareness of the importance of some principles of ethical AI. So what could go wrong when we want to implement floods? So you will think that this is a AI for social good, AI for good project, like nothing, no? So no, in fact, there can many things. There can be many things that actually could go wrong, and different audiences could misinterpret you. So, of course, satellite imagery is a very reputed source of data, because it can serve to many purposes. But as you can see, GANs, the models we use to generate synthetic data, can also be used to generate fake news and spread misinformation. So there is a need to educate on ethical AI, which me, myself, I didn't think it was so important until I faced with, for instance, your paper being rejected in a major conference. So some things that I would like to help people be more aware, and so that we can all create more responsible AI, will be that your project, you should be able to answer things like, who is actually going to use your tool? Who actually needs it? Are you maybe inventing a problem to an existing, I mean, you're maybe providing a solution to an existing problem, or like, for instance, some of the comments we got, like, why would you use synthetically generated images to save lives? So clearly we are not, it would be great if we can save lives with our images, but what we expect, we need to be humble, and what we expect is to help policymakers, help emergency relief, but mostly create awareness of how your yard, how your balcony could look like, how your garage could look like if it will be flooded, how your neighborhood, your city, your community, how could we plan where to build our new house? So these are things that can have much longer impact and effect on short-term decisions, and that can cost city planning a lot. So this sometimes, even if you believe that it's clear how your project will affect and how will impact this, it might not be so clear actually for every reader of your paper, or it might not be, it's not just a paper, but it's actually a project, and how this can be actually implemented and used by anyone that wants to make harm. So is your imaging maybe able to create discrimination? Like sometimes it's hard to, it's hard maybe to say, but you might involve insurance companies, because in fact they will be more interested in choosing who to give an insurance. So there are many things that in fact can go wrong. I would like to thank Ignacio, Franco, and Elvis Sarabia for this nice recap of this panel, that there is some takeaways on a panel called GANs for Good, where in fact many of these points are actually raised, and I believe they are worth sharing. So before you take a GAN for a project, I think that it's very important to know how they actually work. So it's nice if you can explain them, you will better understand them. The best way of learning is teaching, and we should democratize them, so there is no fear, because there are many fears associated to generative models, and we need to be very extra cautious when applying GANs to real world applications when there are lives involved. So one key thing that we might underestimate is learn to communicate your ideas, but also your intent. What do you actually plan with this project? How you will make it deployed in society? And you need to make sure very well that it's just a decision support tool, that there will not be automated decisions taken alone by your tool. So if you think that your tool is gonna cause some harm, or it can discriminate some people, maybe it doesn't give to some people living in flood likely areas an insurance. So that's actually a discrimination, and it will lead to unfairness. So in fact, there are many things to account for this. And we need legislation to be put in place. Because of course we know that technologies go faster in the advancement. So technology progresses faster than law. And so make very clear what is your audience also. It might be very different, the consumer of the data you generate from the actual user. So you need to make, we make an emphasis on the audience as a key element. So what questions could we make so that before working a lot in a project, we can actually know that it's going to be useful, right? I think that's what we all want. So we know also that some of the most rewarding projects are those that are interdisciplinary, but we also know that they can be the most challenging, right? But once we achieve them, it feels good, right? So it's worth investing, and it's worth doing the job right from the beginning. We have been working recently in my group with collaborators in Spain, in Paris, and in some principles of artificial intelligence. They are established already by the expert group in the EU, which, as I said, we should not lead to discrimination, and we should advocate for transparent and explainable AI so that everybody understands it. The goals of your project should be aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. That would be a good proxy to check if you are doing something that matters. And there are some responsible research and innovation guidelines that I would like to make you aware of. In Europe, we also have the data protection regulation and the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, which I hope that you have heard about. If not, you have some references here. Where we need to perform accountability, which is like auditability of models. If a model fails, who is to blame? If a car kills a person, who is to blame? The algorithm designer, the algorithm tester, the algorithm architecture designer. There are many things to think about. explainability is one of my focus because it can reach many different audiences. So it can also be based on causality, on trustworthiness. What we found in this actual project exam is that the trust might not be gained by these machine learning models if they are not properly addressed. And we make always sure that we say, hey, these images are actually created by an algorithm. They are not natural. We also work towards proposing guidelines for ensuring that the models are interpretable and all the impacts that they might have. And we make through the point that the audience plays a key role. So just as a summary, there are many challenges to tackle in explainable AI and AI in general. For instance, in this summer, we use theory-guided data science, which is one of the hot areas where we could validate our models and verify them better. But still, we see that the responsible AI paradigm that we propose is not always so easy to comply with, and we need to be very careful at each step of the project. So thank you, everyone. If you want to read more, get involved. We're very happy on getting ideas on how to implement actually this in our everyday models. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Natalia. And Dava, do we?
Chris
I
is
think
going to. Hi, I think Chris is ready to go to get us into climate localization, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. Great, thank you for all the Q&A coming up. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Dava. And I think it was a very nice walk on the ethics. And we've also been on the oceans, we've been on the forest, we've been on the coast. So I'm sorry, I don't have like a new place to show you, but I think we can maybe think together and try to come up with ways where machine learning help us to forecast localized climate impacts. And for that, let's be clear on what we mean by localized climate impacts. Climate change will change the surface of the planet, but it won't happen slowly. It happens like in sudden extreme events. And we know these extreme events are very, very likely to be more severe and more frequent due to the human influence. And this human influence is mediated through climate change. All of these are events that can be actually attributed, all of the red ones can be attributed to human influence. And these are not just numbers, these are actual impact on agriculture, on economics, on the livelihood of people. As you can see here, on 2018, the heat wave on the north of Europe really caused havoc on forest health and also on agricultural productivity. And the question is, how can we prevent this or prepare for them? Well, first step will be to be able to know when and how these are going to happen. And in the last 10 years or so, there's been a huge boost on seasonal weather forecasting. And seasonal weather forecasting, I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. It's something that sits just in between the 2 or 3 days weather forecast you can get on your phone and the very, very long-term climate projections for the next 100 years. So if you are curious and you live in Europe, you can check how weather is going to be for the next winter in the FIS portal. But if you Google, you're going to find that also for the US or Africa or South America. And if you want to know, next winter in Europe is going to be pretty warm. And December might be kind of like unusual December. But how do you actually take actions given this? Well, resolution of these projections is very, very coarse. And climate impacts or impacts to the vegetation happen at a very, very local scale. We have factors such as slope, proximity to a river, whether soil is moist or not, that they change every 100 meters. So if we could actually forecast this very, very local changes at a very, very local resolution, we could help individual farmers. Farmers could actually just check online, well, how it's going to be next spring? Is it going to be very dry? If so, what part of my field is going to be most affected? Forest managers could also use this, or reservoir water managers. And can we actually do this? Well, it's very difficult, but I think it's feasible. And actually, we're pursuing this. The idea, or why is it actually feasible? It's because, well, we have a lot of observation, we have a lot of data that we can make use, and we have very powerful models. So in machine learning, we have these spatial temporal deep learning models that are used mainly in robotics or self-driving cars. where you can give it some labels and they can actually generate a video out of them. And we could leverage them and try to give them the climate projections that we have that are very coarse resolution, and also some very local factors such as what's there, what's the elevation, and so, and try to generate how it looks from space, right? And once we can generate how it looks from space, we can measure the future impact, or we can at least have a good idea of how that's going to happen. So I have some preliminary results with these video prediction models, and here you can see our projections. This is work from my PhD thesis, and it's very preliminary. So just know that probably you are the first ones to look at this. And here you can see actually the real observation of how the landscape changed for those very same locations. And of course, on the observation, you see clouds. We don't have that on our projections, which is good, right? We can see through clouds for our projections. And this translates to a prediction of how is the vegetation state. However, this is just an approach, right? This is my PhD thesis. I'm only one person here, and there might be many different ways to solve this problem, and it's a huge problem. We need more thinking. So let's see how other people will be able to solve this problem, mainly machine learning scientists. So why not just open up our dataset and try to make a competition and do some crowdsourcing out of it, right? And machine learning scientists, they are very competitive. It's not so much the case on climatic science. So they're welcome to come, compete, and try to solve a nice problem. So we've opened this EarthNet 2021, which is like huge data set with these localized climate impacts. And the idea is that people get the data, try to develop a good model, and try to submit their results. And maybe in quite some short time, we have very, very good performing models to forecast all of these effects on the surface. We'll be opening the challenge soon. And if you want to see, maybe towards mid next year, it will be fun to see how people can do on it. I really hope people can do very well. I think it will very benefit a lot forest managing and agriculture mostly. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the great presentations. I like to start with a question that it's not on the Q&A, but it's been asked offline, and I think it's in the interest of the participants. How can we use, and I'm starting with the flood, how can we use the flood tool in other countries, for example, Nigeria, Brazil, and the same with the forest tool? How can we at this point export these tools to create more knowledge and make it affordable or available to other countries?
Thanks for the question. Brandon and Bjorn, do you want to give maybe a quick response, how we hope to get the tools and some of the open source, Chris, as well, into people's hands?
Yeah, I mean, the structure is there, the architecture is there. It's just a question of the data. So what we would need, because floods in the US probably look different from floods in Nigeria or floods in Portugal. So what we would need would be, well, that same data that I mentioned earlier, right? So we need pre-flood images, post-flood images, and segmentation maps. What that would look like for Africa would be, here's a pre-flood image in Nigeria, here's a post-flood image in Nigeria, and then also if there's like a flood model that can do projections for where there's flooding and where there won't be. I don't know if Chris and Bjorn, you guys have anything to add? Or Natalia, obviously.
That's great.
Well, it would be nice to maybe say that as our ambitious goal, this would be nice to see it someday integrated into Google Earth and Google Maps. I think this would be the best way to make it available to everyone, right? So, and not just to floods, but forest. And so there are many things to do, and we encourage everyone to join FPL to continue working on these topics.
Exactly, and so working, because we really need overall coverage, and so it's coming soon in terms of really, it's Natalia mentioned, democratizing the data. We need all of the data and counting, I guess, Planet as well, some of their high resolution data with Google and the other folks in those open source platforms to put all the data in, so we can. It'd be fantastic to be able to look anywhere in the world, it's kind of serving up that data.
Well, thanks everybody. I'm sorry, I'm turning on and off my screen because I have a problem with my connection. I wanted to switch to another question to the marine system. And there's a question by Chris Williamson, and it says, placing monitoring systems on private vessels would be great if vessels owners cannot tamper with it. How is it a secure system? How secure is this system from being, I would say, altered?
So I asked Océane this question. Her Wi-Fi is not good enough for her to continue being here, but she responds, the proof of concept system we implemented in Manta, Ecuador was very much a black box server that only the observer and auditors had access to. That said, creating the correct economic incentives for vessel owners to not tamper is the most important goal of this work.
So I think we have to have buy-in. We have to have buy-in from the industry folks, the commercial folks, the vessel owners, and then also who's going to use the data. So it really, I think that no one has the solution, but you have to have the co-creation to have all the constituents to say that this is what we all need to do. It's not about the technology in this case, right? It's about bringing people together.
There's also another question there, and thank you so much, everybody. Sorry, I'm so overwhelmed by this, the great answers, and there's so much to talk about. There's a question that was the first question posted, and it comes from regarding the flood, and it goes like, how can forecasts from predicted coastal and regional Earth system models be integrated in the visualization that will inform management and policy? And I think this is true for flood, but also it's true for, of course, other. I suspect the answer could be in the GANs and the slush approach, but I would like to the team to answer to this question. So the question, how can we integrate Earth system models, projections, basically, into the visualization tool to inform management and policy?
Yeah, maybe I flip to have Christian maybe take that one first as well, because that really relates to what you're trying to do with your visualizations, and trying to, I'm sure, then that next step, trying to get them to important decision maker and policy makers.
I can try to answer it. I'm not sure I will be able to do it about the very flood predictions, but we met with meteorologists that typically meet with the politicians, and it seems like they are the actual entry point where they have these emergency meetings. Many politicians or decision makers might actually sit in the same room, and now he needs to convey how important it is what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And he actually told us it will be very important for me to actually be able to convey it in a very visual manner. So he will be like the main one that will generate the flood visualizations, and while he explains everything, he will say, and this is how we expect it to happen. And he will be an expert together with the machine learning, so it won't be just machine learning on its own.
Great. Anyone else want to respond? I know we've been thinking about this. This is a really important question.
So maybe we can leave this for a future discussion of. One question also that came is, how do we incorporate the concept of urban areas in the segmentation image to estimate the water volume of the flood, which of course can be used for damage estimation? Is this not something that is crucial for decision makers? And that's the question.
Yeah, I can start us off. We used Slosh, which, like we said, is low resolution. Now you could run that model at higher resolution, but also we actually we agreed to or we created an agreement with a different group called First Street Foundation, which uses a better model and has really nice data for flooding, like a city level. And so it's just a question of getting basically higher resolution flood models, and those do exist. But that's, I think, from our perspective, that's work for FDL 2021.
And so I know also just to make the point that kind of capitalizing on these sloshes, a NOAA model here in the US, and the data that's behind that, the point I think also that might not have been too clear is it's great data, it's technical, but it's not very intuitive, the user interface. So people usually maybe don't know how to interpret those colors, blue and red and things like that. And then if you have the photographs, there's very intuitive. You see someone's house flooding, you see your buildings flooding or the urban areas, but it doesn't have enough maybe technical detail, the three-dimensional detail. So that's why you need to put those together to be physically consistent, we call it, and photorealistic. So you put that together in these generated satellite images. So you're giving people let's call it the technical information as well as a quick picture, a quick look at it so that it's also intuitive. And the whole point of that would be to get to, say, city planners or for disaster, emergency relief and things like that. So you're trying to enhance the tools so that to help their decision making and different possibilities.
And then, of course, there is all the discussion with the hazard curves and the depth of flood and the saturation of water, because, of course, you want to have the first few inches or centimeters are really the big driver for the first damages. And then there is another question also. I don't see too many questions about the forest, but I would like to invite people to ask a question about that. I have a question. I'm sorry. I have a question on for the ocean again, from Cabo Verde, and it's the equipment presented by Oceane is available in other geographies. Can it be used on smaller traditional fishing boats, and how traditional fishing communities in Cabo Verde can participate to this project? So how can they help? And I'd like to link also with another question, which is basically from an anonymous attendee that says, how do you plan to attract citizen science? So basically, how small communities in Cabo Verde can help, but at the same time, I can also, other communities through citizen science can help. I don't know who can answer to this question.
I can start and then open it up, please. That's really the key. The solution to so much of this is local, on the local environment, because we can bring some tools, but the experts are the experts in Cape Verde. The experts are the communities of fishing people in the islands, and so it's really the leadership, the empowerment, I think, has to come from the local citizens. We also do have some work in citizen science we can tell you about too, especially for the forest. But this point about the solutions will come together. These aren't our tools that we put on someone else. It's what are the problems. So it becomes very specific. What are the problems, perhaps in the Azores and Cape Verde, even in the urban areas, the ocean land interface? What are the specific issues? And then working with people to say, how do you configure, let's say, the data, the tools, use AI to best come up with that solution to make sure that it's, again, only the people who live there, the communities, can tell us exactly what would they use and what they need, but then also what would they use.
Does anybody else want to add anything about this? I don't know, I'm not sure. Okay. I think there is one last question for Natalia. That say, I found your presentation very thought-provoking, sorry for my accent. How do you balance the researcher's responsibility of the results obtained with disclaimers that could claim no responsibility?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would like to know also. We're working on it. Yeah, so in fact, this feedback we got was quite surprising for us. That has led me to start the conversation with some philosophers of the science, with one of the high-level expert groups in AI ethics, and with others studying fairness and other hot topics right now, which were not so hot a while ago. So it's sparking my interest because I would like to avoid this. And I guess everybody would like to avoid being told that if you want to have fun with GANs, maybe you should do another thing. Or if you are just, what fake images is just they may be just the only purpose for them will be to create fear. And so this makes me upset, actually, because of course you can, yeah, technology is a tool, and a tool can be always used for good and for bad, but it's up to us and to education of how you use it. And I think being negative, it can be good for make us think twice. So we need to look at the positive side, and we need to be more preventive and making sure that we always say that, hey, this is fake images, this is how you can use it, and go a last mile saying, this is how you can use it, this is how you should not use it. And having some guidelines on responsible research and how to minimize the negative impact. It's something that, in fact, I'm working towards writing a paper. So it's actually worrying me. So I agree that it's thought-provoking, and yes, we're very, very happy to hear your points.
Thanks, Natalia. I'd like to ask a last turnaround of comments from Dava or others. And my understanding this is an international program, Dava, and you are always accepting applicants from all over the world. And is there anything you want to mention to close up this? Thank you so much, everybody. This is extremely interesting, and thank you for joining us. Dava, please.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, and most importantly, thank you to the great work and the presenters. As you can see, wanted to serve up an example of a lot of different topics. And also, it is a call for anyone to participate. To the point of Natalia's point now, it takes everyone sitting at the table, not just the AI folks, not just the scientists and engineers. Guess what? We need the policy makers. We have to have people from many different disciplines. We need the citizen scientists, because these are big problems, and surely we're going to come up with the best solutions if we can get people from all disciplines. So for me, it's a call out for folks who, if you didn't think that, oh, I don't know about artificial intelligence, but I sure care about the oceans, you know, I sure care about nature, then you have a role to play. So in terms of, to sum up, we really need people who don't think like us, who haven't been trained like us, because you're going to help us question ourselves, and you're going to help us do more impactful work. And it's, to me, it's really about co-creation. So it really does, we're going to start from the bottom up in communities and try to continue this good work. So again, thanks to everyone. Really enjoyed spending the time with you all.
Well, thanks to Dava, thanks to everybody, thanks for amazing work, thanks to Air Center for organizing this and for inviting me to be the moderator. It's my pleasure. I can close the session now. And again, thanks to the speakers, Air Center, and to everyone who joined from different timelines and time zones in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.